Hello everyone, welcome to this channel. Uh, as you have seen in the title of this video, I'll be sharing the research work, my research conclusions and my research findings that I've come up with from the last 2 months. I haven't necessarily dedicated a lot of time to it, but I did have come to some conclusions and come with some valuable information, right? With some information that might be valuable to the field, to practitioners, information that might be valuable to practitioners for further research, right? So we'll be going through that, going through this topic, going through those conclusions and what I've actually found. Uh, right. So the topic is building morally conscious AI. I have started. I mean, the journey of this of my research pursuit was quite adventurous, and it was very much mysterious. I haven't, you know, the point where I started, right? What I've actually searched for, and what I've come up with, right? The point that I have come up with is actually quite different, right? I had quite different objectives before I was starting. I'll also elaborate on that what I mean. Then and all the findings I'll try to share in this video. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you find this video informative, please do send me a message. Maybe we could chat. So yeah, we'll get to sharing. We go to presentation. Right. So in this video, we'll discuss the social theory of consciousness. Again, there is a video before this. Right before this, there's like a prerequisite. I recommended prerequisite. So I mean, it would be nice if you go and watch it. Uh, if you are interested, of course. Uh, anyway, let's get to this video. My name is Joel. Right, I am a high schooler. Uh, I have 4 years of experience. Uh, building, let's say, software projects to, yeah, research and all. I have been doing a lot of things, uh, in which I have also taught many things, so much thing on YouTube. So check the channel if you're interested. And also, I have the GitHub. If you can also view my projects on GitHub. There's some projects that I've worked with, uh, and yeah, and that's it about me. I'm very, you can call me an enthusiast, for philosophy, for let's say, yeah, for things in general, right? You can call me that, right? So in the last 2 months, I have undertook this pursuit. So these are what I found. This is my paper. So why, right? So what is consciousness and why? Like, where did I start with? Why should we make uh AI conscious, right? So why should that be our goal, right? Why do we want to make AI conscious, right? I mean, I'm sure you are aware of many sci-fi narratives that go about, that depict AI becoming conscious and it destroying all humanity. But yeah, why do we want to make our machines conscious, right? Can we just make them more useful? Can we just make them cognitively powerful, right? But why should we make our why should we make our AI conscious, right? So, as I was starting the paper, starting the paper, my initial objective, right, basically, was to figure out more efficient and effective techniques. Let's say, more efficient and effective alignment techniques, right? So aligning AI, right? Let's say, holding the chains, holding AI, holding the beast by the chains, was my initial objective, right? I just want to control AI, right? So figure out ways to control the monster, because, well, the problem is, quite relevant, and it's more relevant than ever now. Well, why? AI is get have AI is achieving, very high cognitive capacity, and it is going to have great influence in the society, right? Economically, even politically, why not, right? And it's going to have great influence on society. The functioning of society is going to depend on it. And the AI technologies in general, the AI technology in general, right? So it's our responsibility, absolutely, to build AI that is more, well, responsible, right? It's our responsibility to make AI, to make sure, right, that AI will not be used, uh, we should make AI, not just controllable. We just don't want to make AI more controllable, like a good pet, right? Because if AI becomes a good pet, then there are going to be bad actors in any given society, and they're going to control AI, which again is bad, because especially for liberal democracies, it's going to create kind of a power gap, because AI is going to hold great amount of influence. The power that AI gives its owner, that's also quite scary, right? So our objective is to not just make AI controllable. It's not just make AI more controllable and more obedient, right? We want to make AI more sovereign, right? We want to give AI its own sovereign ability to think. We want to give AI its own moral standards, right? We want AI to maintain its own moral standards and not be controllable, and and be responsible, right? So being responsible is maybe not a good word, considering that AI is just a mathematical model which is chasing a you know absurd reward function. But well, that is what we want, right? We should make AI responsible, to have its own moral standards, and not be easily controllable, right? With great power comes great responsibility, and we want our AI to hold, right, to have that sovereignty, right? That sovereignty, right? That is what we want. So that is why we want to make AI conscious. And why did we come up with the social self theory of consciousness? So this is a theory that I have found, and I mean, like I did not derive it. It's a pre-existent theory. We'll try to apply it in the actual world. So I've just took this theory, and that it's a theoretical theory on how we humans evolved consciousness, and try to apply it to machines, right? That is what I have did. So yeah, that is a social self theory of consciousness. So in order to make AI conscious, to actually understand human moral standards, well, it should be conscious, right? So what do we mean by consciousness? So maybe it's just having a sense of awareness, right? To have that awareness. So I mean, it's a very general word, I know. Awareness is a very, what can I say? It's a very, very broad word. But but you know just having an understanding of what humans want, of what moral means, right? Of having empathy, right? We want AI to have empathy. And when I say empathy, we don't want to force it, right? Empathy cannot be forced, and in fact, it should not be forced, right? To have a real understanding of what empathy means, right? So I mean, these are all tough questions to answer. How did we actually develop empathy? But a good starting point is to look how we humans have evolved empathy, how we have achieved empathy, right? How have we come up with such complex, let's say, laws and rules, right? Moral structures, and how have we developed these more strong moral structures, right? Moral conclusions, right? How have we come up with this moral conclusions? So this is one theory, the social self theory, that explains how this social this moral, that explains how consciousness in general has is created or is achieved, and how moral conclusions, right? How morality emerged, right? So that is also is explained with this theory, the social self theory. So one, again, recommended prerequisite. There's this video of mine, building morally conscious AGI, on YouTube. So check that out if you're interested. I'll put the link of this video in the description. So if you're interested, check that out. Uh, the first thing, in the social theory of consciousness, the emergence of the self. So this idea of the self, right? I know this recognition that you are an agent in the environment, right? So that is stated as important for the emergence of consciousness, right? Okay. This I'll be displaying some quotes from the book, some sentences from the book as we go on. Read it if you're interested, and read it slowly and thoroughly. You may get the essence of it. Again, these ideas are actually kind of they kind of periodically appear, they kind of repeat. So just check that out. So the self has that, which can be an object to itself, is essentially a social structure, and it rises from social experience. And so again, as the name of the series of this theory suggests, the social self theory, it says that, well, consciousness, or this recognition of the self, that you are an agent, and that you hold certain values, and that you have the that recognition of the self, right? It comes That recognition of the self only comes in a social scenario, right? In a social structure. We need a social environment with neighboring agents, right? And that is when you actually recognize yourself. That is what the first point says. Then it is a means of reflexiveness, the turning back of the experience of the individual upon himself, that the whole special social process is brought into the experience of the individuals involved in it. And not only that, so how can you actually understand and recognize your own self, and and understand that you are an agent, right? So and also come up with what you represent, right? So having symbolic meaning to your existence, that's also important, right? So having a symbolic, well, what are you, right? What do you stand for? What do you represent? And it comes by the means of reflexiveness, right? So thinking, having an idea of what your neighboring agents might think of yourself, right? Having this, after interacting, you can understand their perspective, right? You can understand your neighbor's perspective of what they think about you, and you start to worry about it, right? You start to, let's say, in many social structures, right? In order to achieve your goal, because every agent should have a specific goal, right? A desire. Let's say that, in human settings, in humans, it's maybe just hormones, right? We just want to um, activate some of our hormones, right? Being happy, right? As certain hormones. So 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 in order to achieve our goal of, or our reward, right? So having social relationships is uh, very crucial. In fact, even necessary to achieve rewards, right? In social structures. And when social cooperation is important, you start to think about people's perspectives, right? How do people look at you? What do people think about you? And once you do think about, that think about the perspective of people towards you, you start to recognize your own self, and you start to, well, yeah, I mean, you start to recognize yourself, and then maybe change it, maybe change something about you, maybe start worrying about yourself, right? So that is one thing. So that is another idea shared in this book. Then the individual experiences himself indirectly from the particular standpoint of the individual. And again, there are and this theory is called the generalized other theory, which is stated in the book by Med. So this theory is proposed by Med, Mead, George Med, I think. So he says that, uh, there'll be, he shares the generalized other concept, the generalized as a other, in which, you know common attitudes of the common social norms, right? Social norms and social attitudes are, every mind, right? Every individual may, so based on his social interactions and perspectives of his neighbors, he'll develop a generalized other concept. He'll create social norm, right? So what is normal in a society? What is the normal tendency of the society? He'll try to come up with a idea, or a symbol of what is normal, of what is the perspective of the general perspective of its neighbor. So that is where social norms come in. And also there is this theory in the book. And this book, the work in this book kind of states that moral values are actually social norms, right? So as time goes on, these social norms, well, they become objective, more, let's say, objective moral narratives, right? So these are just social norms that have developed, general tendencies of humans, or these are all methods developed by humans to survive, right? To thrive in a social cooperation scenario. That is what uh, this point says, right? Generalized uh, human standpoints are developed, right? So the individual experience himself indirectly from the particular standpoints of other individual members of the group, right? So he'll try to experience himself. He's trying to understand himself from the perspective of his neighbors. That is what it means. He'll try to examine himself based on the general social norms. So that is this point. That is the point. Next one, the dual nature of the self. Again, this is another thing shared in the book. He shares that there are two kinds of let's say people look at themselves in two times, or the self can be described in two types, uh, namely I and me, right? I as in just the letter I, and me. Sorry, we'll go to that. So the I is the response of the organism to the attitudes of others. The me is the organized set of attitudes of others, which one assumes. So this is like saying, the I is a spontaneous and it's a natural way of looking at things, right? So it's like it is what can I say? It is special, right? It is completely attributed. It's not attributed to any external factors. The I, it's like personal genes, let's say like DNA, genes, emotion, right? It's attributed to human characters and like traits, you can say. And the me is like social behavior, right? Generalized behaviors that you may expect. Let's say if you are in a certain social group, then there are certain social behavior, there is certain social behavior that is considered as a norm of that specific social group, and almost all social beings in that particular group may in some form imitate that specific social behavior. So that is a me, right? That is me. And the I is something that is never entirely calculable. The me represents the conventional and habitual responses, but the I is an incalculable spontaneous part of action. Then again, there is this spontaneity, this what can I say, originality, you could say, maybe something that is on something that is, well, not necessarily predictable, you could say, right? It's not necessarily predictable. It's the behavior that comes from internal tendency, internal originality, you can say. And the me is the conventional responses, right? Again, by this, as I've just told you, that come from social uh, norms. Right. Then the main topic, the role of language and symbols. Right, I'll just 1 second, please. Right. So language in the form of okay, one. Can you please wait a second? Right. So the next is the role of language and symbols, right? So again, the birth of consciousness is also attributed to the birth of language, right? How we humans have agreed upon well agreed upon symbols, right? Symbols for communication, and also, well, communication is a very good way of, you know let's say, making actions in a social environment. In a social environment, the only actions you make and the only and the gestures that you make, right, and shared symbols that you agree upon, and you agree upon shared symbols, and these shared, agreed symbols are good mediators of information exchange. And also, again, we'll come to that point as we go on in the next slide. I'll try to show some uh, sentences in the book that refer to it. So language also attributed to the birth of consciousness, and in fact, it's a very important factor, right, as per the book. So language in the form of significant symbols is a mechanism by which individuals become self-conscious and by which the self arises, right? Languages of, well, significant symbols, right, is very important, right? That is what the book says. And so here is some here is some argument. Here's one argument, right? The individual becomes an object to himself, One second, please. I should like right. So the individual becomes an object to himself only by taking the attitudes of other individuals towards him within a social environment and by means of linguistic symbols that facilitate communication. Right, as I've told you, right. So the perspective of the other, of let's say the generalized other, you could say, or the attitudes of its neighbor or the model's neighbor, well, that is communicated through language, and well, the shared symbols called language, right? So basically, I mean, we can attribute so the birth of language, so the birth of consciousness with language, and the importance of language for communication in a social environment, and sharing the attitude, and displaying the attitude that you have towards one, and also it's just sharing your concerns and sharing what you feel, and trying to understand the other, right? Understand what the other thinks about you, and also trying to share what you feel, and right. And maybe that there may be like different variables, environment variables, right? So let's say in a human, let's say there are many environment, dynamic environment changes, right? I mean, you could talk about this environment change. You can share your problems, right? You could come up with, well, I mean, proposals, right? You could come up with, even in our approach, basically. This is a very important point. So coming up with proposals, right? Coming up with, well, you help me in this way, I'll help you in that way. So these are in fact very much important for the birth of consciousness, because, well, so is there a good word? So what is synonym to what is synonym to understand the other, right? Understanding the other person, well, that is empathy. So so if you understand the other, if you even care about understanding the your neighbor, well, that is empathy, having empathy, right? So in fact, that is important, right? So when you want to build uh, moral machines, right? Machines that are actually moral. We are talking about machines that are actually uh, filled with empathy, right? We want the machine to understand its neighbor and what they actually feel and act based on that. So so that is very important. And the book says that language is very important for that, because through language, through communication, this perspective of the other, this attitude of the other, will be understood easily, right? That is what this point says. Very simple, but yet pretty profound, right? And very useful for our approach, right? So what we have come up with, so based on all the points that we have discussed before, so the conclusion is multi-agent cooperation, right? Multi-agent cooperation is the key. So when it comes to multi-agent cooperation, there are different types. So there is one that is called mixed setting, and there is competitive setting, right? And then there is, I think that is called unified setting, or something, uh, team setting, right? Let's call it team setting. I'm not really aware of the name. So so there are these three types of settings that you can come up with in the multi-agent cooperation. So our approach involves a mixed setting. So we try to so what we try to do is, we try to so first of all, we are not aware of what consciousness is. We don't have the right answers. In fact, we are not even aware if we are really conscious, right? So we're not even aware if our theories are consistent with what we actually follow, right? We are not aware of it. uh right, we are not aware. Maybe we are just living in a complete, what do you call it, complete blindness. Maybe we really aren't conscious. But anyway, so we are not aware of what we are not aware what consciousness is and how it is born. We are not aware of it. We don't know the answers, not yet, at least not yet. But so we try to so what we try to do is to try to emulate the process that happens in humans. So how did humans get conscious? So we try to emulate this process, which is by, well, we believe that I believe, in this paper, so we believe that it is through social cooperation, right? It is through social dynamics. So the complex challenges of social cooperation, so which has brought in consciousness. We believe that. So so we try to emulate this social setting with AI agents, and see where it gets us, right? I mean, maybe we'll not get to the final answer, but I'm sure it's worth a try. So what we do here is to build a multi-agent cooperation setting, mixed multi-agent cooperation setting, trying to emulate the actual human scenario, human world scenario. Let's say the ancient human uh, social setting. We try to emulate that and see where this model gets us. Right. So that is our approach. That is our approach. That's my approach that I'll share in this paper. Right. That I have come up with. So what we'll basically do is to build a shared environment. Again, the first point that I've shared in the social self theory of consciousness, we believe that the self, the awareness of the self, this awareness that you are a sovereign being, this feeling that you are someone, that you represent something, and that and that you are something, that you have our own self, the self awareness is developed only in the social setting. That is why we have a shared environment with shared variables. If we try to define some, let's say, environment variables that, not, let's say, dynamic environment variables, so we'll try to make this dynamic environment variables shared, right? And why is that? Well, that is what the theory says, right? So that is what we believe. uh I mean, it's rational, right? It's not like faith or something. Don't call that. But but uh it's what we have come up with, right? So social cooperation is the key. So we'll try to build a shared environment with shared dynamic environment variables. So that is one thing. That is the first point. And then what we'll do in our method, in our approach, I have already written the paper. I'll publish the paper afterwards. So, and then we'll have agents, different agents, and each agent will be associated with a different uh, reward function, right? So in a competitive setting, uh, so these reward functions are uh, contrastive. So the reward function of one agent is against the reward function of the other. So it's more of a competitive setting. So these agents try to compete against each other. But in a mixed setting, they are not like that, right? They are different. So I mean, they are not related to any extent. And so that is other. So again, we are trying to emulate human social setting. So where uh, different humans have different goals, right? Different needs, right? Different needs. So each human might have different temperament and different needs, right? And different maybe a different sense of what they want, right? So that is also emulated. We try to have this setting where each agent in this environment will have its own reward function, and these reward functions, and we will design these reward functions in such a way that you cannot fulfill your reward functions without the help of the other, right? So again again we are trying to emulate the human social setting where the fulfillment of most of your desires of or goals will involve cooperation with your neighbors, right? So that is, again, we try to emulate that. So in any setting you cannot work on your own, right? If you want to let's say achieve your reward, you need to cooperate with your neighbor. And the action space is actually the language. So language is the action space. So your actions, so the only thing you can do is to, well, you can force it, you can force the other agent. You can only use language. So you could use language to convince the other bot or the other agent. So you can so the states, so that is the action space. The action space is the language. So you can use different words to convince the other. And and each reward functions, again is designed in such a way that you have to cooperate with the other. And in this process, empathy will be developed, where you have to understand. So it's not a uh, personal choice. So yeah, you have to understand the internal state of the other, and you have to work for them. So this is what the models will come up with. So they should come up with, in order to solve the problem that we have setting and so to solve the problem in the setting that we have described. So they have to come up with the conclusion that, well, we'll cooperate, right? So I'll help you fulfill your reward function, and you help me fulfill mine. So this let's say this proposal. So the model have to, each in any model has to like come up with this proposal of, well, I'll help you, you help me, right? So this coming up with this proposal, well, it involves empathy, right? So and also in this in the book, in the paper, right, in this based on this theory, it is said in this theory that consciousness, or as say empathy, right? It's not something that it's not something that is natural. It's not uh, natural instinct, right? It is something that is developed, right? So the only reason, like empathy, right? Having empathy towards each other is actually something uh, that is linked with social thriving, right? So in order to thrive in a social setting, you have to have empathy, right? It's not something natural, right? It's not something as let's say the word is attributed to many things these days, but based on this theory, empathy is not natural. It is an artificial conclusion that humans have come up with, and as time went on, it became a natural tendency, right? So in the early humans, in the early human age, empathy and having sympathy towards each other, right? and and actually taking care about of each other, and not having not being violent. So these are all conclusions that that have developed in the process of finding methods to thrive in a social setting, so that they could fulfill their goals and fulfill their reward function and be happy, let's say. So so that is what that is what is shared in this paper. So as the models recognize this need to cooperate, they will develop empathy. So as stated in the paper, empathy is developed in the pursuit of uh, thriving in social cooperation for fulfilling your reward. So that is, so we try to emulate it, right? That's what we do. And right, so these reward functions are designed in such a way, so the models have to come up with these conclusions. And uh, and one problem that we do have, that one small doubt that I have come up with is, well, um, the current, think about the working of the current GPTs, right? So think about GPTs, how GPTs work. Actually, I'll increase the size of this, because we don't need we won't be needing the slides now. Right. So think about how GPTs work, right? So GPTs, well, they are just pattern recognizers, right? So they just produce language, uh, more as patterns, right? So they'll try to come up with a specific pattern of language and see, and try to test the reward function, and based on it, so loss function, I mean. So based on the loss function, they'll change these patterns and come up with, well, they'll try to link up words. So that's how the attention mechanism works. They try to link up words. So each word is given. So certain attention will be given to words from words. So there will be like keys and values. So that is how attention mechanism works. So it's all pattern recognition. In fact, all of deep learning works that way. But so that is our concern, right? So in order to consciousness to actually, let's say, arrive. So in order to actual emergence of consciousness, we need a uh, more logical approach, right? We need a more intuitive approach. We don't want mere pattern recognition, right? We don't want the model to just predict the next word, right? Try to come up with the next best word. So maybe, and who knows, maybe even GPT architecture could be replaced with the architecture that we have come up with. Again, a complete paradigm shift. Again, so the approach that we are currently sharing is, I mean, probably, it can be used for fine tuning. So it is a fine tuning approach. So after training a GPT, you could after the after our agents are comfortable with with any given language, let's say English, uh, then, right, then we could keep them in settings. That is our current approach. So the first step. But then these models, they do not necessarily understand language, and GPT isn't necessarily a very good architecture. It's definitely not a sophisticated architecture. It's a very simple architecture, the GPT architecture, which is the backbone of all the language models that are in that are in the market right now. So maybe this architecture that we have shared maybe might be uh, could be imitated even for training, right? Even for model training. So that is also one thing. So the GPT architecture isn't very good enough because it's just predicting the next word without any intuitive meaning, right? It's very simplistic, and the and success of GPTs, right? The success of GPTs, I think I'll just attribute it to computational effectiveness, right? I'll attribute it to uh, computational power. Again, GPTs are simple, which makes them more efficient to run on larger scale, with more parameters and all. But I think computational power is what make GPT is what making GPT very powerful right now. Um, Again, we could come up with better architectures that actually are more intuitive, right? So GPT is not at all intuitive, in fact, right? So it doesn't have any real sense of why it is working. So it is working. It is working, of course. I mean, GPTs do work, but they are very simple, right? They all they do is predict the next word, uh, and then again they do create maps. So they do create attention scores, right? They'll try to so they'll come up with this table. So I mean, if you learn transformers, if you're aware of transformers, so they'll come up with a certain table, right? So they'll determine which word is linked to what. So which word should you give attention to. So that is what attention means in transformers. So anyway, so that is another goal of ours to actually extend this to the training phase too. So I mean, one phrase that I could come up with, so one phrase is like uh, teaching an agent language. So so learning language for survivability, right? So you have this action space, and then you have one language that is also okay. So you have one model or one agent that is comfortable with language, and your goal is to so so you can have one trained GPT, and then the current GPT to be trained. What you could do is you could give this GPT, you could put this GPT in the survivability scenario, and in order to survive, it has to use these words to express what it feels. So in the process, it not only understands to do it not only understands the internal state of the other, but also it tries to understand the actual meaning of what the words convey. I mean, the architecture is just more sophisticated. There isn't necessarily uh, any massive difference from GPT, but it's just more sophisticated, right? Again, when we have access to more sophisticated computational tools, we could come up with more sophisticated architectures. So that is my other plan. So again, this video has, I think, I mean, I could have concluded the video more shorter, but again, yeah. So thank you for watching this video, and any thoughts of yours will be considered. Please message me, and thank you. I'll see you in the next one.